Hello. So I wanted to go over the most recent book that I started, which and finished, which for this new year of 2021, and it's titled Pachinko by Min Lee. It actually covers a really expansive time period starting from 1910 to 1989, and this book is separated into three different parts. And Min Lee actually uses like these time frames, so it's a very linear time frame, but within each of the three segments, it focuses on almost like a different generation, looking at how family and history and just a lot of pain can carry on throughout different generations. And I think also very poignantly, like a lot of the books that I cover on this channel are Asian American. They are written by Asian American authors and are, culturally um, inspired or influenced. And this one is definitely also along that realm. However, I think that it's very different from like what you would say again of a singular immigrant story. This one covers so many different characters. Every single character is so complex. It's not just about one person moving to another country and like trying to find themselves. In fact, this is very much like a very this diasporic take, because even though the families that we are reading about are Korean, they are actually kind of forced to go to Japan because of World War II. And during that time of, I guess, like political strife, there was this pressure of people in Korea who their land was being fought over to go to Japan, which was like the nearest other country. And it actually goes into talking about how in Japan, a lot of the people would see these Koreans as less than. And so it's an interesting way of seeing how it's not just like, the diasporic, like Asian to a Western country that sees a lot of tension, but also what, like, even just from an Asian country to a different one, and how that still creates tension. And this novel is really big, I would say. It's like over 490, so almost 500 pages. It doesn't read as particularly time or like dragging, because almost like every page, it's like contributing to the plot. Like there's so much going on, and there's so many different narrative structures. I don't think I want to talk too much about the plot, because that is like, I really think that Min Lee maybe had like a web in her mind, or like she mapped all of this out, because it is just, there's so much to talk about. So instead, I wanted to just focus on a particular subject that she honed in on as well, that I found really interesting. The particular topic that I wanted to focus in on is faith. I know this, when I read a fiction novel, I kind of want to escape and like want to be convinced of this like fictional world. But I think this really good job of like talking about faith and still true to the plot without it being too, I guess, like dogmatic. So the first thing, this is towards the middle of the book. I guess these are pretty out of context, but in any case, this one is a dialogue of, this is the sister-in-law's friend who ends up liking her, and he's trying to like convince her to move even though she's already married. And he says, "I don't understand. I will never understand. How could your faith allow such suffering?" So he's talking about the faith of being Christian. But I think this goes into talking about like faith in general, right? Like, how could you believe in something that is higher than, or in anything that has like, I guess, a superior power or influence, when the world that we see is so torn and so just like unjust, right? And I think that is a really big question that every generation has. When this particular line was put in this particular place, it just like had a, like an even bigger impact on me, because I was like, wow, knowing everything that happened before this and then this line, it just like clicked for me. Okay, and then we're going to go on to a later part of the novel, where the question of how can pain, like how can faith allow so much suffering, or like why is there still pain in this world if there is a just and loving God? I see it being answered in this excerpt. So Again, this is kind of like a self reflection moment by the main character. Okay. What did Joseph say to his brothers who had sold him into slavery when he saw them again? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. This was something Isaac had taught her when she'd asked him about the evil of this world. I know this is maybe, I guess, I don't know, for like, I wonder what people like who don't know a lot about faith or religion or like have grown up with biblical stories might take this, but really resonated with me because the part where I highlighted, right? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And so it's like I think a kind of like a mini biblical or like a mini what is it sermon. It kind of reminds me of this the verse in the Bible at Genesis 50:20, and also in a song as well, right? You take what the enemy meant for evil and turn it for good. Period. Talk like this whole novel, like again, it spans so many different stories, and to have these like little moments of religious truth, it like really kind of I think it really showed me how like there is space for these conversations, discussions as well.